Cole Trickle, real name, who sadly isn't a plumber or a venereal disease, arrives in a literal puff of smoke. And despite never having driven a stock car, he's definitely the best stock car driver ever. But damn it if he's not just a bit reckless and arrogant. Enter a sort of guilt-ridden Harry Hogue who comes out of hiding, where he's avoided being investigated for the death of another driver. Apparently that's irrelevant, though. So moonshine addict Harry is going to help our hero with his good old boy wisdom and by hiring a stripper cop to make Cole Trickle.
Oh, yo. Oh, no.
Cole now gets into a tete-a-tete with another driver, Rowdy Burns, over whose name is stupider. But then they become friends over a brain hemorrhage. Cole then holds a woman hostage in a high-speed pursuit before getting into a fight with enemy number 2, Russ Wheeler, because his name isn't quite stupid enough. In the end, Cole Trickle drives Rowdy Burns' car beating Russ Wheeler, and a corporate sponsorship deal is saved. The end. Ladies and gentlemen, for your consideration, Days of Thunder. It was kind of everywhere in 1990. I mean, it was a big freaking deal in terms of the marketing. Like, you couldn't escape it. It was a massive movie. Cruise had already got the bare bones of this story conceived, but he needed a writer to plump them up. Jerry Bruckheimer says, "We worked months and months on the script because the most important part of making a movie is the screenplay." Mm-hmm. You got to get that right.
You've got to get that right.
And he says that, talking about Days of Thunder, with a straight face.
The old adage, you can't make a great film from a bad script. Mm-hmm. You can make a bad film from a good script. Where does this fall? Who knows?
Well, you know who you should speak to. Not an officer and a gentleman screenwriter, Douglas Day Stewart, who was cast aside after his attempt. Neither Warren Scarron, who'd just written Batman, who did a bit of work on it. But you should speak to Robert Towne.
I know.
I know, when I saw it, Robert Towne.
I was like, there must be two. It's quite a common name. No, there isn't.
Chinatown Robert Towne. Yeah. He comes on board, but basically shit was being written as it was being shot and then reshot with the new script because the scene that was being shot didn't work with the script.
Okay.
It was, by all accounts, an utterly nuts shoot. So you've got all this lined up. You've got Robert Towne writing it, Cruise is in it, Bruckheimer and Simpson are on a frickin' roll right now after Beverly Hills Cop, Top Gun, Flashdance. Like, the 80s were good to them. Paramount are confident. Everyone's loving it. Why would you have any doubt? Mm-hmm. You're making Top Gun on wheels. It's going to be a massive hit.
Yeah, the Paramount chief, Frank Mancuso, because Beverly Hills Cop, they called that Top Cop. He said there was Top Cop, Top Gun, and now Top Car.
In terms of this relationship, so Paramount, they just renegotiated their deal with Paramount, Bruckheimer and Simpson. It was for $300 million for 5 movies, any 5 movies that they chose to make over 5 years, as well as perks, including home cinema systems installed at the studio's expense in both their homes. And they insisted in all the trades that their relationship wasn't producers, it was as a visionary alliance. Mm-hmm. That was actually how they had to be quoted. They were a visionary alliance, and they described their relationship in the press with Paramount, the studio funding them, as, we meet them at the premiere. That's how they described it. Basically, they were completely autonomous. They could do what the hell they liked. Would you like to know a little bit of why this would go on to be one of the most expensive movies ever made at the time? Simpson was taking the studio's money, and like Chris said, he was spiraling at this point. The debauchery had got out of control. $400,000 of studio money to convert his hotel suite into a private gym. Money from the studio to fill his wardrobes with Donna Karan dresses for the ladies his assistants picked up from Daytona Beach for him. Taking over a local club for private parties featuring his favourite rapper Tone Loc. Simpson rented out an entire strip club. This is from one of the NASCAR drivers who was invited along as a supervisor. And the whole parking lot had been converted on studio money to look like a NASCAR crash had taken place. There was a NASCAR on fire in the middle of it for the whole night.
So it's someone's job to make sure that fire doesn't go out. Yeah. Brilliant.
Apparently they rented out an entire floor of the Hilton in Charlotte and cut holes in the walls of all the rooms so they could walk from one end of the hallway to the other without having to use a door.
That can't be true.
Well, Jerry Bruckheimer, when asked about this recently, said, I don't remember a lot of that, and I'm sure there's a reason for it. Simpson also wanted to be an actor, so he has a role written for himself in this based on the legendary race driver Mario Andretti called Aldo Benedetti. They shoot masses of footage. Unusable. Scott cuts it all out of the film, apart from one little cameo later on. And all this meant that the film's budget of $35 million goes up to 60 million. To put that in perspective, Total Recall, which came out, I think, a month earlier, was touted as the most expensive movie ever made at $65 million in the same year. Total Recall looks like the most expensive movie ever made in 1990.
Yeah.
None of the money that was spent on this movie is on screen.
No.
It's ridiculous. The icing on the proverbial cake is that having spent 60 million and they've got a June release date, June the 6th, they're all set up. They realise, and I've checked and checked, and it feels like this is real. They start putting the film together. They're ready to take it to cinemas on the 6th of June. They've forgotten to shoot the bit where Cole Trickle wins the last race. So they have to fly back to Daytona to shoot him.
You still don't see him crossing the line.
Do you know?
There's not a shot of him crossing the line. You see him approaching the line, but not crossing the line, which is pretty basic in this kind of story.
But then you see those names appearing. And I genuinely, because I hadn't seen it, I mean, I knew its reputation, but I was like, fresh eyes, looking forward to this. And you see that list of names appearing. Simpson and Bruckheimer, Scott, Robert Bloody Town, Cruz, Randy Quaid, Robert Duvall, Michael Rooker, Kerry Elwes, John C. Reilly. I'm like, geez, I didn't even remember some of these being in it.
Stacked with really good character actors.
What in the hell is going on? Just a little rubbing, Harry.
It doesn't waste any time in getting into the exposition, does it?
Fucking hell.
Woo! That is a talky scene, but it's a lot of information. Thankfully, it's dynamic, though, because Harry's on a tractor.
He's on a slow-moving tractor.
The only vehicle even Tony Scott can't make look sexy. He makes a fucking train look sexy.
It's so disappointing. It's like the Don't Meet Your Heroes thing. Like, you see Robert Town's name come up, and Tony Scott, obviously, there's no one better. Stuff that's stationary or moving in a circle, he's fucking awesome at. And then you get this scene in a tractor where two guys that know each other tell you stuff that there's no way that they don't already know. In such a way as to be the most boring way of doing it. And you're like, but you're you're Robert Town. How is this possible?
It's nuts. It's nuts that this is the opening scene. Robert Duvall, Harry, loves his moonshine. This is actually quite interesting. I'm not saying more interesting than the film, but certainly quite interesting. Stock car racing comes from, and NASCAR in general comes from moonshine.
From moving product.
So they had to soup up their cars to outrun the police, but the cars still had to look normal so as not to arouse suspicion. So they had to look like stock cars.
That's awesome.
Oh, wow.
Which is where the phrase comes from.
It's a great idea for a film.
It really is. So Cole Trickle is a former IndyCar racer. Harry doesn't like his attitude, but boy, can that kid drive. He gets in Rowdy Burns' car, beats his time in a test lap, and bosh, we've got our instant rivalry. This guy is a threat. Now he just needs a car, so Harry decides to build him one in a barn.
Talking to it.
Yep.
I'm going to put some doors on you.
I don't think
this windscreen's going to be the cleanest windscreen.
You're going to ride.
I don't think talking to the car works.
No, it really doesn't.
And they do it more than once.
Why can't he just be talking to John C. Reilly, which is what he does in a bit?
It's that homegrown kind of like, you imagine all the corporate people, all the other racers are in their factories and where cars are normally built.
He loves
he
these
builds
cars.
one in a dusty barn.
With his hands,
It's built with love, but I just don't think it works.
No, it's time for Cole to race. Let's get Cole racing now. And I'm going to say it up front. This 3 minutes, I timed it, 42 seconds is fucking brilliant.
Yes.
And this is the movie that Days of Thunder should be.
Yep.
It's incredible. Everything comes together in this moment. It's when the music comes in, Gimme Some Lovin', comes on, and the tone and the humor and the action just all marry into a massively feel-good experience. And I was like, oh, yes! And then it stops. But until then, just like the whole montage of going all the different race tracks and Harry Hogue and then bantering on the radio, you're like, this is what I thought I was going to get for the rest of the movie.
A good sports movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's not. Honestly, I told you I like car races, and I love watching a car recover from a spin.
Okay.
It's just a personal, not fetish.
Do you think you could do that in real life if your car span?
So an interesting thing, I don't own a car because I'm terrified that I'd go
Of
really
crashing?
fast. No, because I'd go really fast.
Why would you go fast? You break the law.
So one of the reasons I love this film is because Tom Cruise is actually driving those cars,
Yep.
and I get a buzz from watching what a buzz he's getting from driving those cars. Because Tom Cruise, as we all know, loves like speed. And
What I'm hearing is You're too dangerous to own a car. Is that what you think?
I was trying to do it in a more subtle way to sort of sow the seeds that people are like, without actually saying it outright.
Right. Okay.
But I think I'm pretty sexy in that respect.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't be near a car.
Have you ever been karting?
I have, yeah. I have. I went to Lewis Hamilton when he was a kid. Did where he trained? That's not right. Is he drove a go-kart, whatever it is in Streatham?
I don't know what's happening.
I went to the place where Lewis Hamilton used to go, and I drove a cart fast round a track, but not a big car, a little mini thing.
Have you been karting, Chris?
Not since I was a kid.
I went karting not that long ago, and I loved it.
Yeah.
But I genuinely just go. I go so fast, and it's not the best way to drive a car. Although I did come second, and the only person who came above me was
Lewis Hamilton.
But I got flagged because you're not allowed to drive like a maniac. I got flagged, baby,
For being too badass.
Seriously, they were like, we love what you do, but you just can't do that here.
That was the best driving I ever saw. Until he almost got killed.
Claire Lewicki, a 20-something neurologist.
I think
has turned up.
Nicole Kidman was 22. Can you be a neurologist at 22?
Consultant neurologist at 22. She is a child genius.
Yeah,
and that backstory's never explored.
She's Doogie Howser.
Also, maybe she is making rookie mistakes because I think if you have a brain injury and your colleague also has a brain injury, you don't get given your results of the scan side by side. I think they're confidential. She's like, on the left is your brain, and on the right is your brain. It's very odd.
But Rowdy and Cole become friends after what is quite a good scene, the wheelchair race.
Yeah, I just think watching it this time, it feels so. As I said, that's what I remembered.
Yeah.
But then to repeat it so soon after with the rental cars, it feels like you're making the same joke in the space of 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, honestly, this is where I started losing the will to live a little bit. So Randy Quaid likes Russ and so sets up a second team that Russ can be the driver in so that come the climax, Cole can race against Russ, but they're not on the same team. Why it has to be Randy, I don't know. There's a bit later on where he shouldn't really lend them an engine, but does lend them an engine to prove that he's a nice guy in the end, but here he's not a nice guy.
He helps him in the pit lane as well.
Yeah.
I don't understand what is going on.
It's amazing how convoluted this portion of this movie is.
I mean,
when it could be so simple.
I mean, you've just got to have rival teams. We don't need to. You don't need to tell us about. I don't even need to hear the word sponsor.
No, I don't want to.
Rival teams.
Yes, and a scoreboard, please.
And a scoreboard.
Genuinely, though, I do think the film it verges on incoherence at this point, which is amazing when you think. Make Top Gun with cars. And also, Robert Duvall disappears for too long, and he is the linchpin in this movie. So Cole takes out Russ Wheeler after the race is finished, and...
That's attempted murder.
It certainly gets you banned from NASCAR.
But I also think it's attempted murder. The race has ended, and he
not to undermine attempted murder.
Yeah.
He literally drives his car straight into him at top speed.
Yeah.
It's an insane moment, and there's no fallout from it. And Lewicki is pretty cool about it. She's chill. I feel like she should be the voice of reason here. You're insane.
We need to
You're
do another CAT scan immediately. Something's wrong with your brain. Cole is scared. Like Maverick. Duvall, Harry is scared. So he talks to the car again to look after Cole. But there's a leak. They don't have an engine.
Something trickling out.
Claire can't watch Cole race. But then she can.
And she'll put on her best white suit and come down to the track.
And that's pretty much it. He wins the race.
Apart from when they go, he's winning. There's just 23 laps to go. And you're like, oh, for fuck's sake. This is why I don't watch actual racing.
Well, not all racing is like this. Have you ever tried? I've tried to watch NASCAR because I should love it, but it's the oval track thing. I just sort of can't get my head around it. And also, I don't understand. There's a line in this where they say that all stock cars are built equal and it's all the drivers.
Is that
yes,
true?
which is what separates it from F1.
Right.
Yeah, which is, I didn't know that, and that was a good thing to learn. I like that.
You should never underestimate the very end of a movie where the credits start to roll, and how you manage that dictates how you leave a movie theater. If you're on a high or not, you get a lot of goodwill from a good end sequence. an open-mouthed Robert Duvall and Tom Cruise freeze frame sprinting along a pit lane for
Racier.
no apparent reason.
Doesn't he look happy?
What do we
He
do?
does, though, yeah.
I mean, they both look happy, but it's sort of like, what am I taking from this? The legacy of this, like you said, like Top Gun sort of created this entire genre of films, and this did a great job of stopping the hedonism of Hollywood. Days of Plunder was the headline frequently used in the build-up to the release of this by the Hollywood press, and it genuinely killed this Visionary Alliance open checkbook business model because of the first movie being made under that, giving producers this autonomous freedom from a studio was a massive failure in terms of what they expected it to be.
You can't swap out the baddie at the last minute because of a brain injury. So you've got a baddie, Rowdy is your enemy. You have to race him and you have to deal with how that makes you feel as the main character. And also it's got nothing to do with sponsors. It's about winning a race. That's it.
Yeah, I'm the same. They've got to be rival teams. The villain's got to be on the team. Maybe it's Harry's old team. He's got some bad blood with them. He's got a reason for wanting to beat that team. Like, it's simple. That's how sports movies work, is through rivalries, not sponsorships.
Do you think it's interesting? I think what must have happened is your first draft writes itself because it's a sports movie with cars and it's Top Gun. So it does write itself. Rival to everything you've just said. You could write that now in like 2 hours and it would be done. But obviously when you're on set, you lose sight of everything. You've got all these hanging threads about like even alcoholism or a mysterious death or whatever. And you just have to convince yourself that you've done a brilliant job. So I suppose Robert Town is like, oh no, but it's all there if you look. Everything's fine. But we shouldn't have to look. It should be so blindingly obvious.
Why is it so complicated? It doesn't need to. It doesn't need to be. Like you say, I mean, I even think, you do the Rowdy as the enemy until the very end when they end up on the same team against an even worse team, a villain, a big corporation that's just bought their way into NASCAR. It's something else. Like, so you get that friendship, the whole proto-enemy thing that Roger Ebert was talking about. Anyway, I just think, it's the script. It's like, what a mess.
We messed up big time on Sunday. I had sponsors in the stands, and I'm hugging and holding hands and kissing them in the ear and praying for a good showing. And what do? We end up looking like a monkey fucking a football out there.
It's time for the verdict. I think Days of Thunder is a really fun movie trying to get out of a terrible movie. It needs to not take itself so seriously. It needs to have a tone like Top Gun, be a bit sunnier in its outlook. And this is a personal thing, but I'm a fan of movies that make sense. Days of Thunder is nonsense. But I do love the race scenes a lot. And I think, I think sometimes people think I pick movies to be contrary in this section. We've had some feedback on Twitter where people think I'm just doing it to take the piss. But the best bits of Days of Thunder, I think, are better than the best bits of Top Gun, which are the races in Days of Thunder. So my winner is Top Gun. Fucking Days of Thunder is not good.
Vicky.
I don't think they're either of them brilliant. I think Top Gun is a bit. Well, it's obviously.
Oh, really? No.
So surprise.
Is that why you don't want to win in this week? Just throw them both in the pit.
No, just Top Gun's cultural footprint is obviously enormous, but it is stitched together. It avoids story where there could be story. Iceman doesn't do anything as an enemy. He should sabotage a plane. He should do something, but he just growls at someone in the shower. Not get anyone killed. I just mean tinker with something. Like a practical joke.
Sorry, you want a scene in Top Gun where Iceman tinkers?
But I think the plane action and the car action are equal, but I'm just going to go for the one that is more fun and, like you say, makes sense, which is Top Gun.
I'm going to do 2 quotes. One, this is what Don Simpson said when someone approached him with his head in his hands on the set of Days of Thunder. He said, "We're fucked. There's no story here. We barely have a first act, and then we don't have anything after that." And then this is studio head Sid Ganis looking back. He said, "Days was so difficult, so painful all the way. There was almost no story and there was no ending. It was just cars going round a racetrack. We shouldn't have started without a script." I'm inclined to agree, and that's why I'm voting for Top Gun.
Top Gun is our winner this week. So
I think it should be at least partially Maverick's fault that Goose dies. Like, maybe he got the jet wash thing, maybe whatever, but there should be a thing that was his fault. Not enough for a court-martial on this, that and the other, or there's a bit of ambiguity, because then he's got something that he could learn from. Because when he goes back up in the sky after Goose dies, what has he learned? That planes are dangerous? Yeah, they're dangerous. You knew that when you signed up. So what has he learned to change his ways?
maybe Maybe Goose gets injured a little bit on the way out of the cockpit, lands in the sea, and then Maverick gives him something too heavy to hold, and he drowns.
No.
And so he's sort of partially responsible.
No, not that.
Right.
He's partially responsible for the manoeuvre that puts the plane in a spin.
Hold my typewriter.
And he does because he loves him so much. You're the only family I've gone.
Take my dog tags, look after them.
Make sure my son doesn't become a pilot. This shit is lethal.
There's one thing I want you to do. Never let Rooster, as he will be known, become a pilot.